say less. I'm back in that bag again. Yeah, yeah. Oh, say less. I'm back in that. Yeah. What you doing? Yeah, yeah. I'm back in that. Hey, where you going? Hey.
Hey everyone, welcome to the SPL waiting room, the one-stop shop for all things SMITE Pro League, where you can find out a lot about the SPL. That's from us, but not the... I flubbed it. I flubbed it. What did I use to say? Like, your one-stop
shop for all things SMITE Pro League. If you don't look at the website, the Twitter account, or anything else.
If you just look nowhere else and only come here specifically for us and our opinions.
Yep.
How did I forget that? That's like my thing.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah, it is. I kept adding to it because I thought it was funny, but now it's like, I don't know if it's a funny bit anymore. So I guess we'll find out. What we're going to be talking about, a lot of what you see over there. SPL is back. Honestly, I'm kind of using this show, at least for me, as like a nice little nifty reminder of what happened. Not just at kickoff, but like what the teams are, how we expect they're going to do. A little bit of a rehash. So if you are wondering and are curious, SPL is going to be coming back. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m. it starts. There will be 2 sets Saturday, 3 sets Sunday, 3 sets Saturday and Sunday. We'll be starting at 11 a.m. And then tomorrow, if you want to hang out a little before the SPL, we will have a European SCC set. And of course, sandwiching SPL every day will be Europe SCC in the morning and then NA SCC in the evening. So a lot of Smite that you're going to be able to see over the next 3 days. And a lot that has come through. So if you're wondering, and if you haven't tuned into anything at this point, and Myflin, you might need a reminder too, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that sometimes goes in and comes out. We split the teams up. We played through the kickoff tournament. 8 teams come in, single elim bracket. Winner then started a snake draft of 2 divisions. Now, those 2 divisions have 4 teams each, as you can imagine. Those teams will play each other in their division twice. They'll play out-of-division matches just once. So you're still going to see a lot of matchups that I think are going to be really, really exciting. But you're going to see a couple more matchups more often. Here are the 2 divisions. So if, let's say, as an example, the Kings, they're going to play the Fairymen, the Hounds, and the Ravens twice. And they'll only see the Warriors, Dragons, Leviathans, and Gladiators once throughout the phase, throughout, I believe, the next 6 weeks as they try to get to the top spot. I believe the winner of each group goes straight to Masters. So they don't have to worry about anything. They don't have to play through any other brackets, anything like that. So you want to be the number 1 in your group. That means you wanted consistency, consistent wins over your team, and ideally consistent wins over the other division whenever you have to meet them. And the divisions themselves, it kind of feels weird because I don't think there's a way to get out of it not feeling stacked for some of them. I think maybe there are discussions of, X might be a little easier, B might be a little harder, who knows? And so we're just going to go through these divisions. And we're going to just kind of look at some of these teams, break them down, figure out where they are coming into Phase 1, where we think they are coming into Phase 1. Because we only got to see a few of them, like... Some of these dudes, they played 2 games at the beginning of the weekend, and literally that was it. And they did not give us a lot of information. And even since then, we've had another huge patch that changed the way healing works. We had a huge patch, I believe, not this week, but like coming in next week, that's going to change up a lot as well, that they were talking about on Wednesday. So with all these changes that are still being stacked up for them, they haven't played a whole ton, at least live. Scrims are one thing. And so let's go ahead. We'll jump into the order division itself, and we can talk a little bit about the teams over there. I'm going to look at the Kings first, just because I feel like the Kings make the most sense to me to be the starting point. And that is the reigning world champs, right? They're coming in. They were on a absolutely insane win streak because, ever since they picked up Hardcore, they have now literally only lost 1 set with him, and that was at the kickoff tournament. Prior to that, they had a very easy time going through Worlds. And so the question kind of is, and Myflin, I want to go to you first, what do we expect from this team as this season goes on, and specifically like for this phase? Because last year's Leviathans did not have the hottest Phase 1. Like, they kind of rode that high of like, well, like, we just won the championship. Do we really need to go hard in Phase 1?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the Kings are going to have that same mindset that the Leviathans did. I think that's more so a Zapman exclusive. Like, okay, well, we don't really need to try this early because it doesn't have too many implications on Worlds later on. But with the Camelot Kings, I think this is a team that thrives in solved metas. I'm not sure if this is an expectation that others will share, but when the meta has been figured out and you can math out the best pathing through the jungle, when you want to group up on objectives, which objectives are worth doing at what times, the Camelot Kings are going to outpace you, and they're simply going to play that macro a little bit better. But with how Season 10, or I should say Year 10, as we've got a bit of new nomenclature here, how Year 10 has been lined up so far and how I can only assume will continue to go with 4 seasons changing throughout, there are going to be large meta shifts every couple of months. Solve metas might not exist. Depending on how large of shifts they are, it could be Conquest is a completely different game mode every time we get to load into it, right? So in a situation like that, I'm not sure the reigning world champions are going to see the most success. I think this is going to be a year that is dictated by mechanical, aggressive play, dominating your lanes, winning out in that laning phase, and then building the best lead that you can as you transition to that mid to late game. I'm not sure that the Camelot Kings are that PvP squad. We've had Captain Swing in the past come out and say, hey, we don't want to be the slow, methodical guys. That's just how you win games right now. So if they can adapt to this ever-changing, constant, emergent meta, then and if that's aggression as I've essentially postulated here, sure, the Camelot Kings could look good. But going off of history, I just don't think this is going to be their year.
I feel like, based on all the words you used in that description, I think I know what team you're banking on.
Yeah, there are a couple teams I'm banking on.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yep.
That actually is maybe not as surprising as I think now that I'm looking at the names in front of me and remembering the rosters. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be an interesting one. Trelli, same thoughts, different thoughts on the Kings?
No, I seem to think that they are definitely, they still have that synergy going. They still know how to farm the map very well, but when it comes to those in-your-face style matchups, as we saw against the Oni Warriors, for example, those style of teams, the Kings are still going to struggle a bit, but there's nothing wrong with second place at the moment, right? I don't think they're... When Myth says struggle, he's not saying they're going to fall below bottom 4.
No,
their last struggle was third place.
Yeah, he's saying comparatively to what they were as the world champs. So if that's the same, which I think he disagreed on, I think they might struggle not at keeping that number 1, but there's no way we see Camelot Kings, 5th or below. I don't think that would ever happen.
And Jmac, I'm going to twist it a little for you. Not just how they do, but specifically looking at the group they're in, right? With the Fairymen, the Hounds, the Ravens. This is a team, like, if you're looking for Masters, you're looking to try and kind of keep that best in the world spot. Those are the 3 that you have to beat more consistently. Are they, I guess, not more like capable of doing it? Because we know that, yes. But is it going to happen?
I think this might actually be the best division for the Kings to play in right now, because if we're talking about they're struggling against the scrappier style of teams, the Oni Warriors, namely, was like one of the big ones that jumped in there. The Jade Dragons are very similar play style.
Are they?
They can be, for sure.
That's the Oni Warriors of last year with Mike.
But now you got Mike spearheading that along with Lasber, who also likes to get involved very early in the game. You take the Leviathans, who may not be as scrappy, but definitely can get to that level. And you have the Gladiators, who, as mentioned earlier, Bobby loves to run it down over in the support role. You got a lot of great players behind him as well in that team. I think the Kings may have lucked out getting put in this division compared to the rest, because the Fairymen are a sit-back-and-farm kind of team, wait to late game, let Cyclone and Paul carry the game throughout. The Ravens are a sit-back-and-farm kind of team. You're not going to be winning out through the dual lane too often over on that team very much. The Hounds might be one of their more difficult matchups, I think, in that regard, because it's some newer talent to the league, because you have players that do like to brawl a little bit earlier on. I think this might be the best chance for the Kings to win out of division. I think if you put them on the opposite side, we might be potentially looking at maybe a 3rd place in their division kind of standing.
You know how we had, this is really tangential, but you know how we had like hashtags for all the teams? Is like, what is the Hounds hashtag? Can you just be like hashtag bark?
I think it's barf.
Nice.
It's got to be like bark.
But does it have to have 3 because 3 heads? That's the real question.
Arf, arf, arf.
Arf, arf, arf?
Yeah, that's not bad. If it isn't that, it should be.
Hashtag bark.
I'm pretty sure it's howling. I thought that's what they liked.
If Brand is listening right now, it should be arf, arf. Let's keep it real.
Gotta be 3 arf.
Like hashtag howl for the Hounds. I thought that's what they were doing.
Howl. Oh.
At least for the Fairymen, it's easy.
I could be wrong. That's just what I
saw. For the Fairymen, they made it very easy. It's row it down.
Yeah, that's good.
Is it? Is it?
And then the Ravens were just like, caw.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's a
caw.
little-
Right, Ravens were just caw.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback off the Fairymen bit of that. The next team in that division, right, to kind of look at, and the ones that were drafted like relatively, early on, right? It was Warriors got theirs, Throw Kings over there, they threw Dragons over there, then Fairymen get thrown into the Order division. They had an early exit, Trelli, during the kickoff, and this is a team that I've come to personally expect a lot of early on in like the phases and the years, right? Phase 1 is usually like the Aurora, Paul, like super dominance, and we'll see. But lately, especially with an early exit there, and I believe it was to the Hounds that they had lost, maybe some question marks being thrown their way.
Yeah, I definitely have, I would say, I don't know about the most questions, but definitely up there for the Fairymen, how they're going to perform. It's
Raise the
just,
woof.
it's just an interesting dynamic here because no one expected them to do as well as they did at Worlds. Then after that, they sort of fall flat and face, I guess, the kickoff tournament, we'll call it, which is what it's actually called. So I don't know. I don't know what to think about them. Are they this powerhouse team with all these great players? Of course. But are they going to play to that standard that we know, or is it still going to take a learning curve? I would say we learned a lot in the kickoff tournament, and we also learned so little.
Yeah.
Said so much, but
I know.
nothing.
And that's just what I bring.
Yeah. They just didn't have, I guess, a lot to showcase there. I mean, we saw a lot of bans maybe thrown their way, but admittedly, don't know what the team was thinking coming into it, and we haven't gotten to see a lot of them since then. Myflin, you feeling kind of similarly? Is they didn't give us a lot of footage to go off of?
The Fairymen and the spirit of this team carrying on from Season 9, essentially for me, is don't talk to me about them during the regular phase. I don't care. It doesn't seem like they care either. At events, at Masters, at World Championships, this is a team you're going to have to keep your eyes on. That's very dangerous for all these other teams in the league who can guaranteed look at them and say, wow, these guys play up to the competition when the stakes are high. But as far as regular season play, if you're going to talk to me about Phase 2, Week 3, Day 4, the Fairymen are sleeping in and they're showing up with like 2 hours of rest, right? Like it just doesn't seem like that's when they're at full gear. So as far as where they're going to end in this division, I mean, if they're just having a good day, I mean, they could come out on top. But I would project them to be lower here, maybe third or fourth.
And Jmac, we saw like shakeups, I guess, for this team, right? Like coming into this, you get a returning core that has done incredible things together, but they haven't done it, as Myflin likes to point out, for some of the times when we'd be like, oh, that's a reigning world champ. Like it's been a little while,
5 years ago,
for a lot of them, to get a lot of this stuff done. So like, are we feeling they still have that same level of potential?
So a little behind the scenes, we pulled some questionnaires with a lot of these players, talked to them, say, what are some of your favorite metas that you've been in? What are some of your favorite rosters that you've been a part of? Some of the favorite players that you team with? And a lot of the players of the Fairymen, from what they submitted in, was this core of the team between Sino having Aurora and Cyclone together, being able to play with Paul and whatnot. Baskin's kind of the only offset of this team that's only been with them for a little bit, but every single one of these players that's currently on a team has teamed with each other at some point in time. So there is some chemistry in that regard, but you're going to say it's been a while since the core of this team has found success in being able to win a world championship, but at the same time, 3 of those were just in a World's Finals together. You had Sino, Paul, and Aurora together. Cyclone, early exit in Season 9 from this team, and then Baskin now jumping back with this. I have faith in this team, but I think Myflin might be right to say that probably early on, don't expect an insane amount of this team. This is definitely one that always kicks it up when it comes to the Masters events, when it comes to the playoffs, these big LAN events where a lot of stakes are on the line. This is a team that steps up, and it even goes true even towards, qualifying in towards Worlds. They made it to Worlds, and everybody's like, didn't really have a whole lot of weight on the Tartarus Titans, especially because they had just made a bunch of roster changes, losing layers, bringing Sino in, then getting Stewart on the team, so there's a lot of questions. Then they surprised the world and made it to second place right behind the Camelot Kings. So early in this year, probably not a lot through, but I do have faith that this team, once we get towards Worlds, once we get to Masters, I have no doubt this team will make Masters, and I would probably even say at least top 4 Masters. Yeah,
someone that I kind of expect, just I from name power alone, expect a lot from, and we'll just see whether or not they live up to it, right? I think, if I remember correctly, Aurora always hates it because he feels like the term super team always gets thrown around, and it's almost always his team that has it. It's like, well, you just got a bunch of good dudes on your team, man. I don't know what to tell you. And that's kind of, I think, where the Fairymen are at. Maybe always sets expectations like really high coming into the year, and I think that as the Fairymen, I don't know that they're that high. Like it's just kind of like you know what, we'll see what happens with you guys. Maybe it'll be fantastic. Maybe some stumbles. Who knows? They're going to be going up against and myflin. This I'm going to come back to you because we were talking about teams that could potentially run it down. The Hounds, who had and actually I want to say kind of surprising start to the year. The qualifiers, the kickoff, right? A lot of I think really really strong play. And they came out to kind of prove themselves. And the real question I have is not just what can we expect of this team, but more so, are they going to avoid what we saw from teams, like last year, the year before, where when you're qualifying in or you're at the bottom or expected at the bottom, you just never really get to break out of there. This feels like a team that should surpass like the Scarabs and the Valkyries of the past.
Yeah, I mean, nobody is impervious to the rookie year woes. It is a major culture shock moving from the SEC, where you're top dog, essentially undefeated, and then you have to come up into the SPL, right? And you're the new guy on campus all over again. I equate it to being a high school senior then moving to college, right? It's very difficult. But if I am correct in my evaluation of how the meta is going to develop over the next couple of months and the state of the game and exactly what is the ideal way to play Smite. If it's that fast-paced, run it down, one shot, get aggressive, low TTK game that a lot of people seem to be saying that it is, I think that the Eldritch Hounds might be able to leapfrog some of those issues. They might be able to just jump over some of those standard freshman woes, if you would. Whether or not we're going to get to see that in Phase 1, TBD. I think we're gonna have a very good idea of it by week 2. You can check back in with me, and I'll tell you whether or not these guys are gonna be able to make it past that 6th seed overall, or whether or not they're gonna be able to jump into the top of the pack. But as of now, just have not had too many opportunities to see them. I have got a good deal of confidence in these players individually. In particular, I love their support. I think Quig has a phenomenal eye for the game. I think he's one of the most intelligent players that I've had the opportunity to speak with about how he thinks Smite should be played, as opposed to a lot of people that just say, well, the top guy's doing this, so we're going to try and do that.
Yeah.
He definitely has developed his own ideas of how he wants to address it, and if he's going to take a leadership role with his team, I think they could perform. But cop-out answer, we just don't know yet. We just don't know. If it's an aggressive meta, I think you can have a bit of faith, though.
I think that that's a team that they have better prospects in my mind than what we've seen some of the teams in the past when they come in. Especially considering at the kickoff they were able to beat the Fairymen and at least hold their own a little bit up against, I believe it was the Dragons in their semifinal. So like not the easiest path forward to them, but still one that was very, I want to say, just like telling. Good eye opener, a nice little way to put some flavor at the start of the season. And I'm excited to see what they have to offer. Trelli, Jmac, do either of you have like thoughts about the Hounds that really change from Myflin's?
No, I think he hit the nail on the head, right? They have that young drive of like, hey, we are still grinding. We want to prove ourselves, but we don't have the data to know if that was just the first tournament jitters. Are they way better than we think, or since they are that new young team, was it just they got a good meta? They have a strong jungler. Oath gets a borderline penta to push them forward, and they just got lucky. Those are the sort of things that we still have to feel out.
The real question is, and Trelli, I'm going to go to you because you've got 2 players of this on your fantasy team now.
Yeah.
The Ravens.
Yeah.
Last team in this group, or in this division. Real early exit.
Yep.
And the last pick during the draft. So like they were undervalued, disrespected, or do you think that was realistic expectations?
No, they're definitely undervalued, but I think that's no fault of the people that were valuing them. They didn't have a great performance at the tournament. Did we expect them to perform a little bit better? Yes, I think we all did, but unfortunately, the team as a whole just didn't really seem to mesh. Scream looked a little lost, in my opinion, not the explosive performance we're used to from him. This is a team that I think has very high highs if they can reach them. I drafted Mara and Ven thinking that they can be very consistent.
Yeah.
And that they had a great performance at Worlds, both of them. It's really just, how's this team going to mesh together? I think that it's going to be a lot of hearing that when talking about some of these new teams that are just, a sort of Frankenstein's monster of other squads together. but I think the Ravens could have a very good time in the Order division, or they could just get bullied. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're getting bullied in the early, it's not good for me. I'm not going to get many points, but
getting bullied is not bad, guys. You heard it here first.
Okay.
Trelli
Rally
has
supports
endorsed
bullying
it.
2023.
I'm saying if they take some L's in the early, they can use
Shoved
that.
in a few lockers, get a few swirlies, builds character.
Exactly. Thank you. Myflin really articulates my thoughts.
If you haven't had someone wedgie you on a flagpole and lift you all the way up like in cartoons.
Hold on. That doesn't happen in real life.
Like, surely can't,
I've
right?
never
no
once
way.
seen that happen.
That would absolutely ruin.
I've never seen anyone even do like
Underwear?
the underwear on head. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like
it's
that.
not
I've
that
never
stretchy.
seen that.
There's no way that can support the weight of a human.
No,
You're
it
buying
would break.
cheap underwear, Fruit of the Loom looking.
And that's where we bring you to that next sponsor. No.
Hey, please sponsor us.
Yeah, like, hey, we'll wear your underwear. Jmac, Ravens thoughts. I need a bailout, bro.
No, I think that the Ravens have a lot of high potential in this squad. They have a lot of tenured talent with themselves as well. I think, and I'm going to echo a lot of what I said kind of in the post show of that tournament was, this might be the worst matchup that they could have gotten was against the Oni Warriors, a team that loves to run it down. When we talk about the Bolts of Past, they struggled the most against teams that were highly aggressive in the early game, that didn't give them a moment to breathe, and they would usually have to try and adapt to try and slow down that pacing either in their drafts or on their play on field. The Oni Warriors never let off the gas. That was just the W key team of the entire tournament. I feel that was the worst matchup for the Ravens. I think that if that meta does continue through the regular season, this will continue to be probably their most difficult matchup. I think that they're going to struggle for this first phase a little bit in division. I think out of division will also be a bit, but maybe not as much of a struggle for themselves. They only had to play the Oni Warriors one time, so thank goodness for them. Is 4 of their 10 games that they have to play is against that W key style, where the other 6 is more in tune to the kind of play style that they like to go with. A little bit slower paced early, wait for the team fight, because they have players who have great minds for the team fight. You have Haddix from the solo lane, Barracuda, who always knows where he needs to position. It's a lot of players who typically are not ones to lose you the game. My problem comes from where is their big win factor for their team. I think it comes from Scream the Jungle. He's probably one of their big win conditions for that team. I just need to see the consistency as the season goes on, because we really didn't get to see a whole lot of them. And their games were fast in the kickoff, so we didn't get to see much from them just yet.
Yeah, they got a lot of growing room from what we saw to what we know they're capable of and where they can potentially go. But that does it for the Order division, right? Whether or not that team or those teams, I guess, are going to do well against each other, something that we get to start seeing literally tomorrow. Again, 1 p.m. start time on Friday for SPL, 11 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. But it doesn't cover all of the divisions, right? And Myflin, this I think caught you off guard the other day. They are playing one matchup cross division. So, everyone that we just talked about is about to play the 4 teams that we're about to talk about, vice versa. So not just within each other. You're going to have to deal with some matchups. And much like you were just saying, Jmac, one of the teams that they're going to have to deal with, when you look at the Chaos division, we have to go to the number 1 draft for that squad. They got to choose Chaos, and I believe, if I remember correctly, they said that embodies what we just did, which was their play style throughout it. And Myflin, this is one of those teams that you had said maybe is going to thrive throughout this year. Was it just one good weekend where nobody else was really prepared, or do you think that it's really going to be consistent?
I don't think that the Oni Warriors play style can be consistent. I don't think you can consistently win every single lane. I don't think you can consistently out-pressure everybody in your direct opposition. I don't think Panatom is going to consistently just absolutely diff every other jungler in the league. Whether or not they're able to play at a very high level and consistently look for aggression, sure, but the degree with which they succeeded, I think, is unrealistic to ask of them.
Yeah, especially week in, week out, right?
A repeat performance of that is so difficult. It was a hot weekend for a team that I think will do well this year. I think it's going to be a meta or a series of metas that will likely favor them just by nature of the meta shifting constantly. But as for consistently looking at the same outcomes that we had seen, I don't think this is going to be a team that's getting like a 13-win streak like we had just seen from the Camelot Kings.
Yeah.
They could very well be top 3. I've got them projected top 3 for the year, but I don't know how well they'll be able to maintain this play style, because there are answers. We've seen similar performances from peak Jade Dragons, where they were Jazzberry jamming everybody, and then like a switch had been flipped the next week. They couldn't do it to anybody. So I think just by nature of how this team has elected to play, consistency will not follow them.
Maybe. I was going to say a call out. That's not really even a call out. It's just going to be, can they do it? And what I like about this team, player wise, is that it feels like they are the ones who would also ask themselves whether or not they could do it. Like, they're going to be like, I don't know, man. It might not work every single time, but we're going to keep doing it and until it stops. And so it's going to be fun. Also, really worth mentioning to me was the fact that after last year, and actually the last couple of years, like Jake not having a crazy like standout performances on this team, he was one of the better KDAs that they had, maybe one of the best KDAs that he's had like ever.
I mean, to speak to that, Jake's playstyle with the Olympus bolts just did not mesh. And I know that the community at large, Jake's the problem. He's running it down. He's getting picked constantly. He's probably the most first blood guy on that team. But it's because Jake is a playmaker and he wants to make things happen. And that iteration of the Olympus bolts was a team that would often find themselves playing to not lose as opposed to playing to win.
True.
I don't think you're going to ever be able to accuse the Oni Warriors of that. So now he's on a team that can facilitate his play style a little bit more so.
That's kind of what I'm excited to see, right? Is just we had questions, Jmac, coming into this that were, okay, well, these are 5 really good mechanical players. Can they actually make a team, though? That's the big question. And they answered that pretty emphatically with that first weekend. But it's that as myflin has said, kind of consistency, right? Like making sure it happens week in, week out, not just in their play style, but maybe in more. That has me raising some questions, but they're going up against teams like the Dragons, the Leviathans. Gladiators is kind of a TBD, but definitely a team with a lot of good names on it. It's not the easiest division they found themselves in to try and keep that rolling.
No, I think we definitely embody the Chaos division with the 4 teams that are in there, and I think obviously the true embodiment of it with the Oni Warriors off their first performance at an event. I think Myth is right to say that it's impossible to ask this team to keep doing that level of play every single week just because of how often the meta is going to be changing. Some gods are going to be good. Some things are just going to be bad, especially with how often the changes to itemization is being gone through. I mean, if we want to talk about just like in the mid-roll specifically, we've had 3-4 different mid-itemization changes over the course of this season that have drastically changed up the build so much. So with how ever-evolving it is, it feels like it's just a team that will be more mechanically inclined.
Yeah.
I think they proved that this is a team of super mechanically gifted players on there all individually. And it's one of the few times we've had a team where we can look at it and go, any single person on this team can and has been a hard carry for their team at one given time. And that's probably one of the hardest teams to go against because you think, okay, if X team is having a good time, we ban out their jungler, now all of a sudden the team has completely fallen off. You ban away Pagon, okay, well, Stot's just going to take some picks and he's going to carry there. You shut down Stot, okay, well, Panatom's going to have his pop-off games. Okay, well, we'll ban Panatom. Well, now you got to deal with Netroid. Now you got to deal with Jake. It's such a hard team to draft against because even if you take just a couple of individual god picks, those can flex to 3 to 4 different players on that team and make it look good. Take the Hebo, for example. Pagon was popping off what did early in the set, and then Sot had a game with it, and he absolutely went crazy with it. So I think that's what makes this team dangerous is their god diversity amongst themselves, but also the fact that they each individually can also play so many of the same gods as each other that it makes it so hard to draft against this team because they can have any pick that they want that can work out so well for them, or any of them could just have an absolutely pop-off day.
Yeah, I think this is a team that, man, I'm just really excited to see what they have to offer. I also think I have a partial vested interest in them because I do have Netroid, so I want them to do partially well in their duo lane for my own personal gain of fantasy points. And that's about it. That's my only actual stock in them. And we'll see how that works out. Trelli Dragons.
Yep.
Another team that comes into this one, second overall. The real question I have about this one, they get second at kickoff.
Yep.
Is it good that this core stuck together? Like, was that, again, maybe a one-off weekend? This core has had some struggles over the last few years when it comes to regular season play. And I think that this is a team that they all get along incredibly well, but is adding Lasbra and Mike to the Vote Dardes Nika combo enough to elevate them beyond what we've seen out of that core in the past.
I would think so, just because the team as a whole, you know, they're all very skilled. We say this about just about everyone. It's going to be a bit of a repeating. You know, we know that they all have their very high highs, but you know, how are they going to mesh together? I think Mike has a good. I don't know what the mentality is about like bringing a group of maybe like a sheep herder, perhaps. You know, he can bring a shepherd. Sure, he can bring everyone together. If that is what it is, I don't know. I don't herd sheep, never have. And I think besides that, the issue with the Oni Warriors the now Jade Dragons, the Oni Warriors last year, I think was a bit of consistency. Yep. I think Lasbra can fill that role in the jungle that they really were looking for, where, you know, Cuvo would have some of the best performances of his life, and then next week he would just not look as good, which I think Lasbra did that a little bit less. So maybe that's exactly what they need for the turnaround, and I did put some faith in the Jade Dragons as well. So I imagine a little bit more practice time, and I think, you know, they should have those pop-off early performances that we know from them.
It's always really interesting because these are guys that, like, if you asked for it, we could make so many highlight reels from literally all 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And yet sometimes my brain just like looks at the roster and just goes, they're maybe, right? And it's like, no, they're gonna do well, or at least I like to believe that they will. And I think it's really funny though, because Vote recently, like we had done a thing where we asked them to like describe their own play styles, and Mike's was like, yeah, I'm like, run it down. You're never gonna see me, you know, sitting passively behind anything. And then Vote was like, yeah, so I AFK farm until late. And I'm like, all right, that's going to be a really interesting clashing of the minds. But it kind of works out, you know, myflin, at least playstyle-wise, because we're talking about what are they bringing in. Dardes, in that same kind of the question, replied that he was someone he sees as a playmaker, right? He wants to be aggressive. And that's the exact same thing that Mike said. That's the exact same thing that Lasper said. And if you're looking at a core 3v3 that wants to get active, it feels like these 3, once they get out of that initial laning phase, are really going to try and W key down anybody that stands in their way.
Yeah, I think this is a team that certainly has the capacity to carry the spirit of the Jade Dragons. When I talk about team identity, to pull back the veil a little bit about how my analysis works, the heart of every team in my mind is with 2 players. It's the support and it's the jungle. Yep. Those guys choose how you play. They choose which portion of the game you're going to play in. If your support wants to get active, you have to get active around them, and the same thing with your jungler. So having PBM and Lazar in, I think, will be a massive shift for the 3-man core of the Oni Warriors. I think there's going to be likely some growing pains there. Dardes has been a self-reported playmaker for a very long time, but he also plays Hera, and he plays these non-playmaker picks. So if he wants to be a playmaker, get on someone mobile that can make things happen on your own. And if you're wondering what gods are those out of mid, go look at Pagon's last 20 games and throw a dart, and you'll find a playmaker, right? And we don't often see those selections from the current Jade Dragons mid laner. If Mike and Lasbra can pull the team together and have a conversation of, look, you know, the Vote wants to be this late game hyper carry, you farm up early, let's build a draft that makes the game play in the soul lane or makes the game play in mid, and that mid 3v3, we can create space for him to farm there. There are strategies and ideas that a team captain and someone with an eye for the game can look at with this 5-man core and say, this is how we play to the strengths of each of these pieces. But that is always difficult to actually action. Everything sounds good when you're theorizing. Not everything works when you're actually on the field. So I've got some confidence in the Jade Dragons. Of course, every one of these players is historied and has got a phenomenal pedigree. Whether or not they're going to work out together, TBD. We can get the 5 best players of all time and put them together, and they could be the worst team we've ever seen, right? So for now, more data required for the Jade Dragons.
Well, and you know what? We'll get it. Just might take a little bit. We'll get you more data in 2 weeks.
I need it.
We're coming back to this topic.
Data monster.
And you know what? We're getting to the point where we're almost on time. We got 2 teams to go through, so we don't got to rush, but you know, we'll talk about them a little quicker. Leviathans. We bring back a lot of the success that we've seen in the past, but they add adapting. They add find okay. Jmac with 2 new additions to this team. Are they the same caliber? Are they better? Are they worse? Like, where does this team come in compared to its past iterations?
I think that this Leviathan's iteration is a side grade in that at the moment they're not better, they're not worse. I think they need time to determine if this team is going to elevate or if this team is going to decline a little bit. Give them time to figure out, you know, what each of their play styles are going to be, because when we saw the Leviathans during the kickoff event, we didn't really see anything new. Also, they weren't playing with their mid laner at the time. They had a sub playing there, so there's a little bit in there, even though Gabe did have at least one really good game and then 2 pretty all-right games for his regard. He's not Shinto, so you can't really encompass the identity of this team through that one event with that kind of a sub. So I think that at the moment, my sitting on this team is that you brought in a very consistent solo laner in Fine. Okay, you had a very consistent solo laner with Haddix. You had a very consistent solo laner with Yarkor. So right now, you're right there you're kind of even in that regard for the solo. For the jungle, Panatom was definitely the star player of the team. You then throw him over into a whole other team. So you've lost your very aggressive style jungler who was handicapped on that team because he was losing out on so much of his farm to his mid laner.
But you get the
now
king.
You have adapting the king, but he hasn't been the king since season 3 of SPL. So when we want to talk about, but he's a world champion. He's a 2-time world champion. That was 7 years ago that he was a 2-time world champion.
I think I just aged so much. I have a jersey that
know.
I bought for that finals that I just unpacked.
I know.
You just made me feel so old.
I just aged us both in that. But I think that's the way to go about this one is that Panatom was the aggressive player. He was playing as good as he was, given the circumstance of the fact that he wasn't able to get as much farm.
Yeah.
Knowing how adapting is going to have to adapt to Shinto's playstyle as well is still to be determined. So at the moment, I don't want to peg this team as being better or worse. I want to see how the team is together first, because we didn't get to see Shinto with the squad, and then we can go from there. So at the moment, I'll say this is a side grade of a team.
Well, and you know what? I think I'd be inclined to agree, right? You're just trading 2 really good players out for then 2 really good players. So theoretically, you're going to just continue doing really well. They did go on a tear during phase 3 last year, though, and so that's kind of where I want to see them maybe try and get back to, right? Is that just dominant force that is very difficult to deal with. Might be the meta to do it. Maybe that's kind of the shift. We always talked about them as being a team that would learn the meta and play it better than you. Maybe they've made some of the shift ups to make that so it's not exactly the case. Myflin, I'm going to go to you because you seem to really like the new guys on the block to talk about the Gladiators, which realistically what this is I mean, more just expectations. What qualifies as a good phase for this team, right, as compared to years past? Because we could come in and say, hey, look, you're going up against the Leviathans, the Warriors, and the Dragons. Ha, good luck, idiots, and then just leave it at that. But, this is a team that has a lot of names on it. Didn't have the cleanest performance up against the Kings, but looked kind of good in games 1 and 2. That was all we really got to see of them. What is it that you would say is a good phase for them?
Yeah. How long have I been casting now, Gore? We're going on 4 years just about? My idea of a good phase now is as simple as it possibly can be for anyone at home, and it's the same idea that your average viewer has. Look at the seeding, and if you're 8th, I don't care how many wins you got or how unfavored you were, you had a bad year. You had a bad phase. Okay. So I'm done with hey, we're going to give them a grace period because they're growing and adapting. Now we've got more veteran players on this Gladiators team than the Hounds do, but I find myself more confident in the Hounds, at least in my mind. So looking at the Gladiators, I loved their chances making it into the SPL. I am not in love with their chances at thriving in the SPL. If I'm being brutally honest, and maybe I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, I foresee this being the feeder team of the SPL. I would be surprised if we make it to the end of the year and this team has stuck together. I think there's going to be roster shakeups. I think there's going to be some talent moving around. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to make that explicitly clear right now because there are a lot of people, and I've seen it in particular in reference to the previous version of the Valkyries. Props to these guys sticking together all year. Man, they really stuck in there. You played together, grinded together. That's worthless garbage. That is trash. If you're sticking with a team that you think has no chance at winning Worlds, you've wasted your time. Okay? I mean, there is one thing that everybody aims for in the SMITE Pro League, and it's to pick up the hammer at the end of the year. Yeah. That is your goal, regardless. So I don't. If this team looks awful later and they keep looking bad, they need to make changes. I'm sick of the let's rock together. I'm 10 toes with my boys. No, let's get moving and let's make some roster shakeups.
I just imagine that same ideology at a job. Man, we're going bankrupt, but we really stuck together. I wanted to feed my family, but hey, we went hungry together. No, get a new job, bro. What are you doing? Yeah. So yeah,
pass the baton, bro.
That makes sense.
Man, I'm trying to find a way to soften it, but you just kind of said it. I seriously do think this team. This
team has more potential than the
I think it's going to end up being like the Scarabs, not in the standings. I mean in the fact that what's going to happen is that at some point this year, probably halfway through, right, Masters will end. There's going to be roster shakeups. This is going to be the team that gets picked apart. They're going to be like, you know what? Actually, like, Kirby's like really sick. We're going to pull him onto our team and drop this dude, which that is maybe a bad example because Jungle's like super stacked.
Jungle's a super stacked role.
Carries are also kind of super stacked.
Every
like
role's
Stu's
stacked.
on this team and things like that. So I do feel like this is a team that could get kind of picked apart throughout the year. And unfortunately, if it does end up happening that way, it'll be like the same thing that happened to the Scarabs, where it's like we're not sticking together because we want to. That's just what we got, dude. Everybody keeps getting picked up, and I'm excited to see what they have to offer. But that does close out. That's all the teams. Again, if you're looking at the graphic, you're looking at how these divisions shake out. Again, they're playing each other in division twice, out of division once. For this week, you've got some really fun matchups. I'm just gonna name the first few that like stand out to me the most. Kings Dragons play tomorrow afternoon. That one I think is going to be incredibly fun. Warriors Leviathans is Saturday afternoon, tentatively around like 3 p.m. I think the Fairymen versus the Gladiators is going to be a little bit of an eye opener for both of those teams, as well as maybe getting to see what the Gladiators can do against a team like the Dragons or the Fairymen versus the Kings. A lot of really good like powerhouse matchups that are going to be coming up this week. Yeah, I almost said phase, and it's like, nope, that's just 3 days that I covered right there. I guess overall, I want to get like a top start the phase, right? We did a thing like at the very, very beginning of the year before kickoff when we had just seen rosters of, okay, where do these teams line up? And so now I just kind of want to know, if you had to choose your number one from each group, who's going to Masters Jmac?
Kings, Warriors.
Kings, Warriors.
Yeah.
Trelli.
Yeah, I'll go with Kings, but to be different, because I think we did talk about how the Oni Warriors might have just been explosive for that phase one. I'll say Kings, Dragons.
Myflin.
I've got nothing substantive to back it, but I'm appealing to authority. Every pro player I've talked to about the Order Division says the Ravens are ungodly slept on. So I'll go Ravens just because the pros have to know better than me. On the other end, I'm probably taking the Warriors.
I feel like I'm going to go...
You got to say something different. So
well,
we all have something different.
So phase one, that's a Fairyman phase. So I feel like Fairyman.
Okay.
And phase one, that's a PBM phase. So Dragons.
Okay.
You know? Like, we'll just see if they combine
Simple.
together. Sometimes it's just how the beginning of the year goes, right? And we'll see whether or not that ends up coming true. That's going to be... let's call it predictions for the phase. Of course, this weekend's going to be really fun. Make sure you're tuning in tomorrow, 1 p.m. for the SPL, 11 a.m. For some SEC, and then Saturday, 11, Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for all of those to watch the SPL. 2 sets on Friday, 3 Saturday, Sunday. And we're going to have a lot of fun watching these teams take each other on over the next 6 weeks, see who goes to Masters. A whole lot going into this one, and I'm really excited for it. We're going to kick it to a break, though, and when we get back, I believe we're doing a tier list where we're going to talk about the things we love to cast. So that's going to be really fun. Make sure you stay tuned, and we'll be back.